Someday as a
Sarge, did you say you want us to eat oats? You're a nut.
Whoever human beings don't eat them. Who eats oats? Down.
There comes a time in every soldier's life he's got to do something beyond the call of duty. Now, did you men ever think what your share of $1 million is going to be? Whatever that.
He was a hell of a character, that Wilco, wasn't he?
It was like seeing somebody I don't know.
Was it?
Yes.
Really? Mm-hmm. What about that? One of my favourite characters among that motley crew you had there was that Private Doberman, the slob of the century, wasn't he?
Well, that was a marvelous accident. We had an open call where everybody could come, you know, right, when we were framing the show. And the creator, Nat Hiken, the comic genius, you know, and we were a good team, because I would sense him. Sometimes he'd go way overboard. And he looked at Doberman, excuse me, and fell in love with him. And gradually, we gave him a little more to do and a little more to do. Now, Doberman, whose real name was, I've forgotten. But I love the name Dwayne Doberman, you know? Dwayne Doberman. He didn't know what he was. When he became very popular, and he'd ask the children, you know, would ask for all, yes, I'll give you an autograph, little man. He thought he was Cary Grant playing the part of a fat fellow. And he was, he lived the way people thought I lived. I mean, he didn't miss a cocktail party. And it's something about when I'd have to go to do a benefit someplace or a charity show, he was the safest to take along for the trip, the quickest. And invariably, we'd make these plane trips. I'd get to the place, and the next night would be the show, and in would walk Doberman, one of the stewardesses. I don't know, some women dig distortion. I mean, he was living like people thought. I was home rehearsing, alone in a bathrobe. He was out swinging. Oh, I must tell you one thing. There was a darling lady, British actress. God rest her soul, I loved her. She was really the epitome of fluff and happiness. And that was the late Kay Kendall.
Oh, yeah.
She asked to be on our show. Drove us crazy. She was then Mrs. Rex Harrison. Kay Kendall wants to be on our show. So Nat, who was very quick, completely wrote a script which had to do with me being a British officer. I posed, you know, with the salute. So she'd come to our group. She was on an entertainment tour, you know, but I tried to get her to entertain at our camp. That was basically the thought. Well, we were instant television. We had 3 cameras, and we were, in a sense, live television, because we never stopped for mistakes, even if they came, unless it was a big mistake, you know, like a piece of scenery falling. And I never went to lunch, because I found I faded during the day, the day we shot. I'd stay in. But there was a little Italian restaurant that they all went to. As I said to Kay, I said, Kay, go with the boys. Excuse me for not going with you. I don't go out to lunch. But you'll have a jolly good time. And this Italian restaurant used to have a little table set for our crew. And the boys bought wine. They all saluted Kay, and then down to the business of eating, because they had to be back in the studio. But nobody told her about Doberman. It's a compulsive eater, you know. He had a hero sandwich on this arm he was working on, and 2 meatballs on a fork here, and the wine gone here, and the thing all over the unit and gone. About 9 things were going at once, and Kay had, at a certain moment, turned and saw this. And she froze. And Henshaw, one of my corporals, wonderfully humorous boy, he saw Kay's amazement, and he tapped her and he said, remember, he's working without a net.
I I was amused to read in the book too that you recall that he was so slobby that the crew used to have bets on how many of his fly buttons were undone when he walked on set.
Oh, when we made my personal appearances.
Yeah.
I never forget in Las Vegas. He knew nothing about gamblers. He thought everybody should faint, when they saw him. I was interpreting. He thought, and he wore a beach jacket with the varicose veins in his big stomach. It was really. And there was a dice game going on, a big game. There was about $40,000 on each roll. Some visiting faction had come to buck the game in this hotel I was playing at. And Doberman came in from the pool in a kind of a little beach jacket, and he had a tubercular silver dollar in his hand or something. And he figured everybody should faint because there he is. And he walked up and he says, "I'm with you." And he leaned over this 4 deep they were, and he put the silver dollar down. The dice hit his hand, came up a 7, and wiped out all the numbers. Well, everybody was indignant, including the dealers. They said, "So the least you could do is get up close. You should have excused it," but whatever they said. And he looked at him at his full 5'3", in such disdain. He says, "Why, you run this like a drugstore." And he walked away.
That shows us.
But they were a great bunch of lads, and it showed in the show. We worked very hard. We rehearsed very hard. And the only one who miscues was Doberman.
Yeah.
We protected him. You don't know this, but he never did too much.
No.
Long speeches, because he couldn't handle it. And he had excuses when he blew a scene, I'd say, "Oh, for God's sakes, Dwayne, why do you dare?" I mean, it's an effrontery to all of us. You're supposed to come, and then he says, "Sarge, I tripped on a piece of paper." I never heard that one. Once he was late for rehearsal, keeping us waiting, and he said a priest short-hopped him for a cab. What did you mean, Doberman?
Do you find that wherever you go now, Phil, though, that you are recognized as Bilko?
I think I'll never live that down. I don't say that disparagingly, but like in this country, they don't know. I've done 5 smash Broadway musicals and great special shows. But Bilko is I've always been Bilko in everything I did. The only thing is that in Bilko, I wore a uniform. And I sometimes talk to college groups, drama groups, and I can't presume to say that I know my art and discuss it. It's instinctive. And I'm very good at answering questions. I used to say to the drama, ask me a question, and if it isn't about Shakespeare, which would be presumptuous, because that's another world. But when I'm saying something on the stage, the most ridiculous thing, I believe it. Because if I didn't believe it, it'd be like jumping from one building to another and changing your mind halfway across.
Yes.
I think the title of my book, which I wanted to have, and they wouldn't do it, is "Comedy is No Laughing Matter."
Yes. Is this why? Because the great comedians have to work so very hard at it, because it's such a precarious job, such a difficult thing to make it laugh. Is that why so many comedians are neurotic? And indeed,
I think so. They shouldn't be, because it's a great gift. I'm one of them. I'm the king. But the doubt of it is what makes you neurotic, I think. Let me see if I can explain that, Mike. A great dramatic actor, a great comedian. Give the comedian a bit of the better of it in your evaluation of sympathy. Not sympathy, they make a lot of money. I don't mean sympathy, I mean understanding. Here's what I mean, maybe this will make sense. You go to a dramatic show, you're a star of a dramatic show. You have the assurance, because it's a big hit, there's an audience tonight. They're fighting for tickets, sleuth, or whatever, You're also in a big comedy, and they're buying tickets. What assurance do you have to laugh tonight? That's why comedians are half nuts.
Yes.
That little doubt.
Yes.
But it shouldn't be. It's immature of me to take that attitude towards it.
Yes.
But that's the only way I can explain it.
Yes. But I mean, what were the girls like?
Look at all that hair.
Yeah, it's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah,
You want to borrow some?
Very unsanitary. What were we saying?
What were we saying? Oh yes, I know about the girls in burlesque. What were they like? Were they?
They were in their way ladies. No, it was honest. There was a great deal of honesty, code of ethics. Your girl was your girl. More so in the upper echelon in show business. I mean, and if you were a little queer or a little off base, it went through the industry like wildfire. We knew about it because it was a little industry. I don't know the liberties we have here, but there are two incidents that are so funny in burlesque that I remember.
You're totally free to say what you like.
Well, I have a great respect for people, and I would tell this to my children, so I'll tell it to you, and your audience. Not that you're on the same mental level.
No, of course.
But I met a wonderful man named Rags Ragman, which made me stay in burlesque and become a big hit in burlesque, even though it was like prostitution. You knew it was there, but you didn't publicize it, you see? And I worked, we were on a side street. And I worked for the Minskys. Yeah. I hope that name is famous. Well, anyway, Rags taught me, not taught me, but gave me the scene to do, because in burlesque, stock burlesque, it wasn't how funny you were, how long are you funny? Because every week we had to do different scenes. Yeah. And they're all public domain, like, as it turns out, Abbott and Costello were fortunate enough to do Who's On First, the baseball thing first.
Yes.
But it belonged to all of us.
Yes.
It just happens that they did it. They had the first crack at the higher echelon audience. But anyway, Rags didn't care if school kept or not. I used to rehearse the people. Just quickly tell them what to do. And it's great schooling for a comedian. If he's got one ear on the outside, because you have to earn your money. And so I told as spicy a joke as the next guy. But I knew that's not the way to do it. And if I told a real snapper, I would step to the footlights and say, it's a little thing I borrowed from the Theater Guild. And the jerks in the audience had no idea what I was saying. Yeah. But the reason I said it, maybe you were out front. So you, the equivalent of you, would know, I don't want to do it this way. But when in Rome. Anyway, we were going to rehearse for the next day's opening. And Mr. Minsky said, put that girl in your scene, if you can, the new strip woman. And when we got to the theater to rehearse, I looked at the new girl, and oh boy, I have never seen in my life.
Nor have I.
Well, God rest her soul, she made Marilyn Monroe look like a boy, Anyway, I immediately took her out of the scene. Because even in the business suit she was wearing, I couldn't believe that it was true. Well, most tremendous size. Well, anyway, I took her out of the scene, mentally, and put another girl in. But I was going to break a rule. You never watch the strip women in the wings. You give them that courtesy. And you never lift their costumes that they drop in the wings. That's their business. You can always tell a Johnny newcomer in burlesque, he watches the strips from the wings. You give the girls that courtesy. Excuse me. I don't know what the hell I'm nervous for.
You're not nervous at all. Just got a cold or something.
Well, actually, I just woke up. See, we've been rehearsing Forum all day.
Yeah.
Then we're going to do something funny happened, I'm afraid, in the Forum.
We'll talk about that later. Talk about burlesque. I want to know about this girl.
Yeah. You're a nice, normal boy. Well, anyway, I broke the rule. I was going to watch this. And the way it's usually done, the orchestra would play, dun, 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 and the announcer, who in this case is Robert Alder. He was what we called our breast serenader, the worst job in burlesque. Oh, pretty girl, looking that way to the audience. And the jerks, for 25 cents, I can see all the nudity, Well, he says, the sunny shores of California, Harold Minsky proudly presents Mamie La Bump, or whatever her name was, And the curtain parted, and there she stood in the gown, and, and you could hear the gasp from the predominantly Italians in the audience, Maro, And she knew it. And she teased. And she wore, of course, she still wore the gown. Did the first chorus of what we call the tease. Then the second chorus where she pulls down certain parts and then turns to the audience and does this, nude from the waist up. Now you cannot tell dimensions when they stand like that. But at the end of the third chorus, she did this. And ba-boom, like some beautiful tray with an edge on it. Wow. There's always that one jerk in the audience with a great sense of humor. There's always that one guy. There's a lot of heckling, but there's also some fun. And as this climax hit, Zazam, this voice said, California, here I come.